The Gospel of John tells us, standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. Now, even though we are told there are 3 women in this scene, what changes the whole picture for me is the fact that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is standing beneath his cross. And as a mother, she stands alone among the others. She stands alone, gazing at her son nailed to the arms of the cross, and suddenly her arms, which once cradled this child, they feel useless. So she hides her useless arms and her empty hands beneath her shawl. Up to this moment, Mary had witnessed all that had happened to her son. She was present when Pilate pronounced to the crowd, "Behold the man." She saw the flesh of her own flesh, scourged, bleeding, crowned with thorns. She saw his almost naked body walking among the crowds, trembling, his body jerking to the rigors of death. She heard the banging of hammers and the insults, "If you are the Son of God." And at this moment of death beneath the cross, the distance between she and her son, who hangs suspended between heaven and earth, is overwhelming. At this moment of death, she is silent. There's no wailing or lamenting beneath the cross of her son like there were with the women who accompanied Jesus up the hill to Calvary. There are no words spoken as when she found him in the temple as a young boy or at the wedding feast of Cana as a young man. Only her silence speaks to us at his death. In his first letter to the Corinthians, St. Paul compares the language of the cross with the language of the world. And the difference lies in the fact that the wisdom of the world is expressed through words, whereas the language of the cross is expressed through silence. What's most important to realize in this scene of Jesus dying at the cross and his mother standing beneath the cross of her son is that Mary is not just present there physically, she is there spiritually. She's united heart, mind, and soul to the cross of her son. She's the first to share in Christ's sufferings. She suffers in her heart what he suffers in his body. And how could anyone who has any idea of what it means to be a mother think differently? When Jesus called out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing," she repeated those same words within her heart, and she forgave. When Christ cried out, my God, why have you abandoned me?" so Mary must have suffered something similar in her heart, now pierced by that sword of sorrow. In those last moments of his life, when even the Father seemed to mysteriously withdraw from Jesus' human gaze, Jesus only had his mother's gaze from which to draw comfort. And when he told her, without ever uttering her name, "Woman, behold your son," who of us can truly penetrate the mystery of that gaze between this mother and her son? You know, in every human suffering, there is an intimate, private side lived only by the family of those united by ties of blood and by hearts of love. And the same is so true for Mary and Jesus. But ironically, between this tremendous suffering, a joy passes from one to the other like water being poured from one vessel into another. And the joy comes from the fact that there's no longer any resistance to the pain in them. They have no defense left against suffering. Peace has taken the place of that struggle. They have become one with the suffering and the sin of the world. So in his last moment of life, Jesus utters his final words, "Father, into your hand I commend my spirit." Obediently, he hands over his entire life to the will of the Father. And Mary, as at the Annunciation, as in so many mysterious events in her life, at the crucifixion of her Son, she utters her final fiat, "Let it be," and surrenders her life and her Son to the inscrutable will of God before a dreadful solitude will come upon her that will remain with her until her death. Now, the Gospel of John tells us something more about this scene of Mary standing beneath the cross of Jesus. Near her was the disciple whom Jesus loved. What took place that day indicates what we should do. We should stand close to Mary, close to the cross of Jesus, just as that beloved disciple did. What's vital here is that we stay close to the cross of Jesus. It's not sufficient to stay close to any cross in sorrow and in silence. In other words, what counts is not one's own cross, but the cross of Jesus. It's not the suffering that counts, but believing in the cross of Jesus, which helps us to make Christ's suffering our own. The greatest thing about Mary beneath the cross was her faith, which was even greater than her suffering. And the sign or proof that we really believe in the cross of Jesus, and not just in the word cross, but truly we believe in the cross itself, is when we begin to take up our cross and follow Jesus. So our whole life must be a living sacrifice like Christ's, because the heart of Christianity is the cross. It is the sign of love unto death and beyond into the resurrection. May Mary, our mother, help us to stand close to the cross of Christ as we draw closer to her.